Hi, my name is Dana Golden. This is the lecture in my environmental economics and natural resource class that you're taking on environmental macroeconomics. This is kind of one of the stranger lectures for me to provide. I think sustainable development and the way the climate change impacts the economy are very important, and that's something we could talk about in this class a lot, because this is a very micro-focused class. I don't know that intermediate macro is even a prereq for this class, because this is kind of advanced microeconomics class. I'm not an environmental macroeconomist, but we do have one in the department who is very good if you are interested in the material here. So without further ado, let's talk about environmental macroeconomics and how you can think about climate change in a sustainable development perspective. So how to think about climate change policy. Climate policy can have negative impacts on jobs in the macroeconomy, but so can climate change. I'm recording this on December 15th, 2024. In about a month, Donald Trump will become the president again, 47th president of the United States, and he has a very different opinion about climate change than Joe Biden. So Donald Trump, I think, makes the argument that regulations to stop pollution and, climate policy can have had really bad impacts on the macroeconomy, and he's gonna drill baby drill, and he's gonna push natural gas, and it's gonna grow the economy. I don't have an opinion I'm willing to convey today on that, but I think he is right that climate change policies can have a negative impact on the macroeconomy and jobs. However, so can climate change. It's not like if we just let climate change run rampant, the macroeconomy is just going to boom forever and be great. So there's a trade-off here between pursuing aggressive climate policy and having people have food to put on the kitchen table at night. So it's important as economists to present the public with a way to think about this trade-off in a systematic way. So let's start off with what is environmental macroeconomics. Environmental macroeconomics studies the interactions between the environment and the economy at the aggregate level, incorporating environmental constraints into macroeconomic analysis. It focuses on climate change and economic growth, natural resources and their role in production and consumption, how we can transition to a more sustainable energy system, and how we can utilize policy tools like carbon taxes, cap and trade, and green investments. So some core questions environmental macro asks: how do environmental constraints affect long-term growth? What is the economic impact of environmental degradation? And how can macroeconomic policy address environmental challenges? So really, environmental economics focuses on integrating environmental considerations into traditional macro models like SOLO and DSGE, but it also uses some new techniques like integrated assessment models that really push forward macroeconomics in interesting ways. So in Stony Brook and in most economics departments in the United States, you will hear one very specific take, which is that neoclassical economics is the only economics. I don't think that's necessarily true, but it's basically the only economics. I think it's not the only economics, and there are other versions of economics that are very valid. But I think any other version of economics, whether it's MMT or ecological or whatever, will eventually be absorbed by neoclassical economics with its good ideas taken in by the framework of neoclassical economics. But we're going to talk today about this other thing, this other school of economics called ecological economics that also is valid and also has some very good ideas. So ecological economics emphasizes sustainability, ecosystems, and equity, whereas neoclassical economics prioritizes efficiency, markets, and economic growth. Ecological economics views the economy as embedded in the environment, dependent on natural systems, where neoclassical economics treats the economy as separate from the environment and focuses on markets and human production. So, in this class, we talked a lot about circular flow models of the environment. I think the difference between neoclassical and ecological economics is ecological economics attempts to put environmental systems at the heart of economics and uses a lot more feedback loops to demonstrate how there are nonlinear ecological dynamics that allow for massive changes to happen when you get past certain points. Neoclassical economics tends to make odd assumptions. There is some very good stuff in ecological economics, particularly on feedback loops and how they relate to climate change. I do think, however, that neoclassical economics can, as a field, absorb all of that and remain in neoclassical economics, and it probably will at some point. So ecological economics tends to have a very different policy goal in the questions it asks. It tends to do more to aim for long-term ecological balance and sustainable development. These are people who are thinking more about how to value the utility of non-market actors. Neoclassical economics seeks to maximize utility, thinks a lot about GDP growth, and considers market efficiency. And they have very different approaches to resources. Ecological economics focuses on conservation and acknowledging the biophysical limits of the system. You'll see very few neoclassical economists who are thinking about how sustainability can be incorporated into the heart of the economics. And neoclassical economics looks really strongly at pricing and market mechanisms. Ecological economics uses system dynamics, interdisciplinary approaches, and precautionary principles to understand how the ecosystem and the economy interact. And neoclassical economics employs cost-benefit analysis, optimization, and marginal analysis. It's a lot more calculus in neoclassical economics, and ecological economics has a lot of inspiration from chaos theory. So, moving beyond that, let's talk about green GDP and how we can redefine economic progress within the traditional statistical framework. So what is green GDP? It's an adjusted measure of gross domestic product that accounts for environmental degradation and the depletion of natural resources. And so it attempts to reflect the true sustainability of economic growth by subtracting environmental costs from GDP. Environmental costs include pollution, damage, deforestation, soil erosion. So green GDP over time, as you'll notice, it's always lower than traditional GDP, or it has historically been. This is the green GDP of China over time. They're making an argument in this graph that China has gotten better at ensuring that green GDP is close to real GDP by ensuring that more of the environmental externalities are taken care of, and that people are doing their part to help the environment. Is the right adjustment, though? Are we really, actually doing our part to adjust for environmental damage? I would say probably not. I think you'd probably argue, especially based on a more ecological value system, that there is a massive asymptotic limit to climate change beyond which it gets very bad, and we're about to get there. And so probably we should be weighing the cost of pollution a little bit higher. So green national accounts beyond GDP. What are green national accounts? They expand the national accounting systems to include environmental and resource-related factors. They complement traditional metrics by GDP, by integrating depletion of natural capital, ecosystem services, and environmental damage costs. There are several components. Adjustment net savings. There's adjust net savings for resource depletion and pollution damage. Environmental asset accounts track and store changes in natural resources, and ecosystem service accounts measures the benefit from ecosystem functions. The difference between this and GDP is this is a better way of thinking about how to account for the environmental destruction in GDP and in national statistics by thinking about environmental damage at every part of the process. So, how do we think about the macroeconomic impacts of climate change? What could climate change do to society? It could very well reduce productivity due to extreme weather events. It could lower agricultural yields and resource availability. It will have a strain on infrastructure and create higher resource costs. It will have a shift in labor demand across sectors and will decline in labor supply due to health impacts of migration. It will amplify existing wealth inequality, and then it will create accelerated investment in green technologies and energy systems and stranded assets in carbon-intensive industries. It's not always going to be bad. At a certain point, climate change becomes very bad. It becomes unlivable to have a world with so much climate change. But it's not always going to be bad impacts. There are some places that might be impacted positively by some mild climate change, like Siberia. So just these are ways to think about how climate change will impact the macroeconomy, and it's extremely valuable to think about the broader trends that climate change creates. In terms of the value of macroeconomic models of climate change impacts, they help you understand the interplay between economic growth and environmental degradation and evaluate the potential for decoupling growth and emissions. They'll test effectiveness of carbon taxes, subsidies, and cap and trade systems, and identify the trade-offs between growth, equity, and sustainability. They help think about the risk of extreme events and gradual changes. They help inform optimal allocation of resources towards mitigation, adaptation, and support decisions on infrastructure and innovation priorities. If you're an economist, particularly if you're going into industry, it's great to be thinking about the macroeconomy because that's most people's interaction with the economy overall. So that's the overview of environmental macro, and then next time we'll get straight into it with some looks at growth models. I hope you have a great day.